ਸਾਧ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। When we look at the context around religion, especially in the Western worldview or through the Christian lens, there's a lot of things associated that we can't actually take the word religion and or the word God and actually directly associate it or link it to definitions or words inside of Sikhi. With Abrahamic faiths and the Dharmic faiths, there's a lot of significant differences. And because of these differences, a lot of people run into confusion. The difference between what is considered private and what is public, what is secular and what is religious, what is sacred and what is not. So based on these things, we have to first step back and look at through what lens are we actually looking at these concepts at. There's three audiences that I'm trying to speak to through this dialogue. Number one are those that are trying to understand Sikhi or trying to understand Dharmic faiths, but their upbringing or their entire thinking process is based around the Western worldview, Abrahamic or Christian lens. The second type I'm trying to speak to are those that have grown up in a Western society such as Canada, like I was born and raised in Canada, but they associate with Sikhi or some sort of Dharmic faith. And because of the confusion or the upbringing and what influences have affected their outlook towards religion or God or spirituality, and they can't understand what Sikhi is fully. Because of that, there's a lot of gaps that get left. And the third is that those that have been raised in a society that has revolved around Dharm, maybe in Eastern countries like Punjab or India, and then they have difficulty understanding where the concepts or where the philosophies of Western societies comes from and how they actually view religion compared to how, somebody from grown up in the Eastern faith dynamic would view God or would view Paramatma or the creator of the world. So because of these conflicts, it runs into a lot of material consequences and philosophical consequences as well. So when the first thing that we look at, let's start off physically and then we'll move into spirituality and philosophy as well. What you consider private and what you consider public. In Sikhi, you practice Sikhi because Dharm is defined as, I can't give one phrase or one direct translated word that can define Dharm. Dharm is a law of being, a law of nature, righteousness. There's so many different ways to phrase it that no matter how many times I might try to give you single word definitions or translations, it won't directly translate to something that somebody whose native spoken language is English and who's grown up in a Christian philosophical lens will understand what Dharm is. So Sikhi is classified as a Dharm, and we know as the Sikh Dharm rather than Sikh religion. That's something that's kind of been given. So when we look at a Dharm, or especially Sikhi, the way it's practiced, the way it's followed is through every action in life. It's not just a belief. The way you eat, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you speak. Sikhi is practiced through dress, the way you express yourself physically. Now, this might be something that does not make sense And truly it doesn't make sense to somebody looking from the other lens. Because through the Christian lens or the Western worldview, faith or religion, you see something as private. You believe in something, and then when you go to work, when you're dealing with politics, when you're with your friends, you don't talk about that kind of stuff because it's within you, it's your own faith. Whereas Sikhi, it's the exact opposite. It transforms your entire life. Every aspect of your life is based around it. So that's why you run into these conflicts and consequences, like things happening in Montreal in Canada, where the government might be trying to pass laws that are banning Sikhs from wearing the hijab, the Sikhs from wearing the dastar and the Muslims from wearing the hijab, any religious wear that you headdress, especially the kirpan, kada, all of these things are looked down upon. Because I'm not saying they're not trying to understand it. It's just that the lens that those people might be looking at, or the legislators, it doesn't make sense to them, because their philosophy and the way they view religion, faith, God is entirely different. It's not viewed the same. Even though Sikhi, we're the same God. In Sikhi, it's the Christian God, the Islamic God, the Jewish God, the Hindu God. They're all the same God. It doesn't matter what name you give it. So this runs into a lot of different consequences as well. Just like something in France that happened in the past. The France government is saying the kids that go to school, they cannot wear a dastar. They cannot wear a Sikh dastar. They can't express it on the outside. No religious wear, or the kirpan or the kada, none of these things. Because in their mind, it's keep it separate. To keep it separate, do it at your own house. But in Sikhi, you can't practice it. So it's literally viewed and felt as an attack upon the faith. And this might be hard to understand from somebody who's grown up and just always their entire life look through that lens. So sometimes you have to break down your philosophy. You have to break down your thought process and really understand what dharma is, or understand what Sikhi is from that lens, not your own lens. And because of this, those kids are not going to school. And along with this, there are a lot of other factors that come into play, especially when we look at the certain figures within the faith and how they're viewed. So in Sikhi, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the first Sikh Guru, they're not viewed as a messenger, a prophet. I remember I was growing up, and people, even within, growing up, born and raised in Canada, and a lot of kids that were also Sikh with me, they would say Guru Nanak Dev Ji is a messenger. And I was like, oh, okay, but it didn't really make sense. And in English, there's no way to describe it through that lens. It's weird because we're trying to reroute through this lens to trying to make it fit according to the society that we live in. So it's seen as that Guru Nanak Dev Ji in Sikhi is not a messenger, not a prophet, not the son of God. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is the creator, Vaheguru, that has taken form into this physical world. So the incarnation of the omnipresent, the never dying, the endless, the immeasurable, the omnipresent, omnibenevolent, that beautiful creator, the most powerful above all, that creator that's not dependent on anything else, the non-dualistic creator, has taken form into this world as Guru Nanak Dev Ji. That is how it's viewed in Sikhi. Guru Angad Dev Ji, the second Guru, third Guru, the rest of the 10 Gurus, physical Gurus, it's that same light, it's that same form of all of creation within one physical being. Now, when looking through the other lenses, that won't make sense, because philosophically that's not possible through that lens. You're looking at it as Jesus is the Son of God. So therefore, if you believe in the sent as a messenger, you believe in that, and that's going to lead you to salvation, lead you to paradise. Now, all of these things that we're speaking about, it's completely different. So that's what I'm saying, like the whole foundation is, it doesn't make sense. directly. So technically, that's why a lot of Sikhs believe that you can't classify it as a religion even. So when we look at it in that sense, in Sikhi, everyone is viewed as respectable. Now this might not make sense. I had a conversation with one of my friends, and we're sitting in a park, and he said that, how can you believe that Sikhi is true, yet not enforce it on me or not pressure me to also convert? I said, because you're also on the path towards something righteous, and eventually that goal is the same. So my job to convert you, and we're just causing conflict within each other. And for some reason, it just didn't make sense to him. He said, I believe my faith is true, and therefore, because it's the absolute truth, you have to convert, because I feel that I'm doing the right thing to help you, and you're being helped by me forcing you or pressuring you to convert. And he's like, this whole concept doesn't make sense. So that's why there's a lot of clash and conflict between these things. Sikhi, you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're Jewish, you're Buddhist, no matter what it is, you're encouraged to pursue that path. Now when we go further deeper into the technicalities, yes, there will be differences, but to enforce conversion, to say that you're condemned to hell if you're not a believer of exactly what I believe, these things don't actually exist in the realm of Dharm, the rest in the realm of Sikhi. So that's why the word religion has this negative connotation behind it, where religion, or I don't want to get into that, because people think that religion divides, religion does this, and from their lens, maybe, yeah, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense when you look at it through Sikhi. So Sikhi does not do that. And along with that, when we talk about what is the concept, or what is the goal, the most significant difference arises from this. Christianity, or through the Western worldview, you believe, and the goal is to be granted entrance into paradise or salvation or heaven. And when you reach there, it's an eternity of great things. And if not, if you're a sinner, then you go into the eternity of hell. Now, hell and heaven, this concept exists within Sikhi, within Dharm. But it's not an eternal thing like seen through that other lens. Because Sikhi, the goal is merging with God. Now, before diving into that, let's discuss what the nature of God is. What is God? Is God somebody that on a cloud that is separate from the world and just has powers and does things? In Sikhi, that's not the case. Sikhi is saying that the omnipresent creator, Waheguru, is within every atom of this world. Everything that you see is that creator. That's why I don't use the word God. It has a different connotation when I say the creator, omnipresent being, the awareness, that power. This omnipresent creator, Waheguru, is in each and every cell, every atom that awareness works through it, and everything that you see is that form. But you don't see it because of illusion, because of ignorance. And this Homme, and Homme is basically the biggest concept in Sikhi, which there's no direct translation for it in Western ideology. When we look at Sikhi and Homme, this veil of falsehood, this veil of separation, is not allowing us to merge with God or see God, because this world is an illusion. And as a Sikh, you're a drop of water, or we're all drops of water in the ocean. Yet when you separate a drop of water from the ocean, it's associated with a different name or entity. Now it's considered to be a drop of water. So it has an association, has a name, and that separation is considered Homme. The goal is to merge back, because even now we are that form, that all of that power, that greatness, all the virtue is already within you. That's why Sikhi says it's dive deeper within yourself, search for that. And we're not looking externally, we're looking inward. Yet we're expressing outwardly. So here, you're trying to remove that veil of falsehood. What is this homma? What is this veil of falsehood? What is ignorance? It's completely different than seen in the Western lens. Whereas ignorance might be, ignorance is like not knowing something, and ego is meaning you're a narcissist, you're proud of yourself, you're full of yourself. Whereas homma, ego, in Sikhi is seen as a wall that's blocking from two things uniting. The veil of falsehood, the veil of separation. Here's an example. It's like you have a clay pot that's filled with water, and then you put that inside of a pool of water. Inside the pot is water, and outside the pot is water. It's just water and water, the same element. That's the creator, and then yourself. That veil of falsehood, that wall, that dirt in between, that clay, is not allowing both waters to merge. And we call that homma. And the goal of life is to remove that ignorance, remove that homma, and remove that veil of falsehood, and merge with God, the form of eternal bliss. Go back to your roots. And it's this game of separation and uniting. That's the goal, rather than going into this eternity of bliss somewhere else. That bliss is here, automatic, but there is a concept of heaven and hell. Here's the difference. They're like pit stops. When you go and you're judged for the actions that you do, you go into a place of heaven or a place of hell, or you're liberated from the world. Just very simple, keeping it very simple. When you teach a child, it's like, here's an example. You teach a child to do something good, but then you give them a timeout if they do something naughty. So you take that child, you discipline them. Think of it like this. I've heard a lot of debates and discussions about how can God be so omnibenevolent, so loving and merciful, if he's sending people into eternity of hell, and the concept of hell and the underworld, and all of these things come into play. Sikhi is saying that through this lens, you're judged, you go into this place based on your actions of righteousness or unrighteousness, or whatever sins you've committed. Then you go back into this cycle of reincarnation to eventually come to the precious opportunity of a human life. Because in this human life, you have the opportunity to be liberated from this cycle and merge with the Creator. Now this concept of reincarnation is a whole different thing as well. That changes the whole outlook upon life, the outlook upon creation. This affects the vision of time as well. Whereas in Abrahamic religions, the concept of time is linear. You're from past, present, future, and the world is created and then it'll be destroyed. And where Sikhi is saying this world has been created and destroyed many, many times. Been created, destroyed, and it's the time is not linear. It's in a circular motion. Because this age happened, then it goes into the next stage, and then the next stage, and then the next age. And as we go through these ages, we are also in this cycle, and eventually this world is created, but it's not been created or destroyed just once, many, many times. Throughout all of these cycles and creations and destructions, the only one thing that's constant between all of it is the Creator. That's unwavering, unchanging, self-illuminating, non-dualistic, the form of bliss and completely aware. So that is a significant difference between both views. Then when we look at the concept of God is sitting on a cloud, or is God omnipresent within everybody? That makes a difference between all of this. And now when we speak about this, we also have to talk about what is identified as a gender of God. Because in Sikhi, or in any of I would say the Dharmic faiths, there's no gender. It's not associated as like the Christian lens would be like God created man in the image of God. Waheguru, the Creator, is within all creations in every form, within the birds, within the trees, within the plants, separate to the world and within the world, because it's non-dualistic. Because if, according to the other lens, you have God somewhere else and this is something else, there's duality there. And not just duality when the world is gone, or originally there was non-duality. No, in Sikhi, there's non-duality before, during, after, always. There's always non-duality. God is separate and within. There's nothing other than God, or other than the Creator. So the whole concept of God having a gender doesn't exist. Whereas sometimes it's animated. Maybe it comes from Greek influence or Roman influence or somewhere from the past, I don't know. But in the cartoons, in the Western worldview, you see God as an old man sitting on a cloud doing things. This angle sometimes confuses a lot of people to really understand what is the nature of human, what is the nature of God, what is the nature of being, what is the nature of life, right? So all of these things, they cause conflict. Then when we like we spoke about earlier, hell, heaven, concept of God, we spoke about judging. So judgment is not just based on beliefs. Here's a core difference. Judgment is not based on just beliefs. Just you saying or classifying yourself as a Sikh doesn't make you eligible to, I considered myself to be a Sikh of Guru Nanak Dev Ji in my life. I think I'm good to go. We realize where we're getting all of these influences and how our worldview upon our relationship with Guru is affected in this way. Because Sikhi, like I said, is a way of life where the way you're living is a path to righteousness through action, through belief. This karma, or these actions that you do, you create karma. And as you create karma, those accounts are being written. All those accounts are accounted for. And you're judged based on those actions. But here's the next part. You're judged based on those actions, but these actions that you do, they create your future destiny as you're doing it, as you're doing it. And then eventually, the accounts that you've created or you've done for yourself, they eventually, if they're righteous and they're true, they begin to remove ignorance. They make it easier for you to connect. They make that veil of falsehood, that wall in between, the separation, they make it thinner and thinner and thinner, eventually leading you to eventually reach enlightenment. And that's the true goal, to reach enlightenment, to merge with God. You become one with God, whereas in the other lens, there is no mergence. And in this, when you become the form of God, then you're liberated from actions. But to begin, it all comes from your actions. So just to say, classify yourself as I believe, and then that's not enough. Belief is a stepping stone towards the path of righteousness, towards the path of love, of shaping your life in that way. The faith is a stepping stone. It's not the goal. That's just like the baby steps there. Then when we look at this as well, we look at the concept that if my faith, like I said before, is true, then why shouldn't everyone also believe that? In Sikhi, it doesn't matter what faith you're a part of. You're respected in that way, because eventually, like I said, it doesn't matter if you call it Allah, you call it God, you call it, whatever name you want, Khuda. All of the names are referring to the same thing. So it's not the Christian God is different than the Muslim God, and the Muslim God is different than the Buddhists, and the Jewish is different. No, we're all eventually, it's all of humanity, so we're united already. Sometimes we think through the other lens, we can't unite because of faith. But in Sikhi, it's not Dharam or religion is not a factor that unites or separates. We're already united. Yet we just fall under the illusions of through the vices that we think we're separate to each other, and we go into these other thoughts, trains of thought. And when two people are practicing their dharam, practicing their religion, just like I said, it's not the belief, it's the state of mind, it's the elevation of your state of being that you create that removes that ignorance. So when you are doing devotional worship, let's say you're singing God's praises, two people can be doing the exact same thing. Yeah, they can be in different states of mind. They can be at different levels or different parts of their journey of spirituality. One person can be singing God's praises, but internally through their intentions or how much they've done, they're at a completely different state. They could be near the absolute end. Somebody else could be doing the exact same thing, yet they're at near the beginning. And because they're near the beginning, they might feel that, oh well, why am I not experiencing the same thing that these saints are doing or these great beings are experiencing? Because we look at it, like I said, from a completely different lens. It's how much you do and how you've developed yourself. We call it abhyas, which means practice. You're practicing. You're doing it. You're developing yourself. You're moving that ignorance. You're making it thinner and thinner. You're actually molding yourself into it. So it's not, a lot of this times people think, well, I tried reading Gurbani. I tried meditating. I tried becoming a Sikh for like 2 months. That's not how it works. It's not like you can just dip and taste test. Oh, I like that one. I like that one. It doesn't work that way. You dive deep into it and you mold yourself into it. Because the reason why it's not working, because you're looking at it in a completely different lens. You can't look at it in that way. You have to completely dive into Gurbani. And that's what it truly means to give your head. So you're moving towards it, and the ego is being shedded. And eventually, as you continue to recite God's names, as you continue to do righteous actions, as you meditate and live your life, eventually you reach those goals and all of your accounts are destroyed and you merge with God. So that's why it's not just, it's not the belief, and it's not just the action as well. There's the intention behind it, how much is done. All of these things, they make a difference. And to the extent, as a Sikh, it's not just that I'm okay with you believing in something else. I have a responsibility as a Sikh to lay down my life, to sacrifice my life for the defense of somebody else's right to practice whatever their faith is. Look at the extent of that. Now I was speaking to my friend, he's like, that makes no sense to me. It wouldn't. A Sikh is to see that light of God, light of the Creator through all of creation, plants, animals, beings. A difference between a person's actions, their evil actions, and what they truly are is a difference. Because what they truly are is a separated form of God that's wrapped around in ignorance. And what they do, how they act, is based on the influence of that ignorance. So separate the actions and the person. Now this is one of the greatest psychological aspects that a lot of people say, that in order to go get over things that people have done to you, or to fix relationships between friends, this is how you should be able to do it. Remove their actions and what they truly are as two separate things. But look at this. This is already ingrained in the inside of Sikhi, the lens of it. But when we look at it in the other lens, then we get confused on why me. Why does that person have more? Why do I have less? So we're not able to kind of completely like get the full picture of things. Along with this, the concept of illusion and enlightenment, right? Maybe the word enlightenment is used in the Western worldview, but it might be a little bit different. It's not so much that you're coming out of something and going into you're realizing something and you've become aware of something, and now you're enlightened, and now you're able to connect with something. Enlightenment is so much that the thing that you saw before in the Sikhi lens, the things that you saw before, you don't see them the same way anymore. So it's like a rainbow is there, and you know that somebody might think that I can go and touch that rainbow. When you get closer to it, you know you can't touch it. So it's like, here's another example. It's like a mirage. When you're driving down the road and the sun is hitting the road, and eventually it looks to you as the sun's reflecting that there's water, there's puddles of water on the road. But as you drive closer and closer, those puddles keep on moving further and further away. That's the illusion. The entire world eventually, the illusion of it falls away, and you reach an enlightenment where you're liberated from your actions, your merge with God. You're living in a complete awareness of God, and there's a lot of other aspects associated with it, which you can't really understand by looking in through the Western worldview. Okay, now the structure of religion. There's a big difference as well. I've noticed that the Western worldview and history plays a huge factor in historical events play a huge factor in what the outcome of the faith is and how it's structured today. So God intervened in history, sent down the Son of God, said a message, and something else happened along in this way until one day there's going to be the day of judgment, right? So here's the thing. With that whole concept of historical events, those things are given priority, and it's always like look back to the past based on those things. Make sure they're as accurate as possible, because if they're not accurate, that makes a difference. And because of these things in the future, like that's gonna it's gonna affect, and that's what we're looking towards, the day of judgment, or the future of the world. Whereas through Sikhi, that lens is entirely different. Because historical events, they are important, they are valuable, we learn from them, but it's the teachings that are passed through the events that are prioritized, not so much of how and what. They do have great value, but not in the same way. Those events and what's taught through them and how those concepts help us and allow us to dive deeper within ourselves, that is given more priority than the actual historical event. And now sometimes I feel that even because of the influences of this whole trend of proving and doubting and making sure everything is absolute, these things that make us even search into Sikhi with a very different sort of mentality that might have been looked at from Gursikhs in the past, like 200 years ago. That's why a lot of people say that, oh, this doesn't add up, that doesn't add up. The whole thing of this adding up with that, and that's not the whole point. The point is that the teaching that was given through that and how you implement that, the historical event does play a factor, but then how you can use that in your daily life to dive deeper and walk this path of spirituality is much more important. So the teaching that's done. And then when we speak about the day of judgment, this is a significant difference as well. We say quite commonly, rest in peace. Now, rest in peace, when we look at it through the Christian lens, is after you pass away, you rest. Your body dies, that's why you're buried. And then on the day of judgment, everybody's going to rise. And that's kind of the Western worldview. That's why all these movies like in Hollywood, they're made about when all the zombies come out, or maybe it's a virus, or maybe the day of judgment, everyone rises up, or the world's ending. And the term rest in peace is said when someone passes away, because they're resting in peace until the day of judgment. And then in the Sikhi lens, it's not you're waiting for that day. That day of judgment exists, and you are being judged. But when? It's not the same day for everyone. It's when you pass away, you're not resting in peace. You're actually going on a journey towards the courts of righteousness, where you are going to be judged. All your accounts are going to be opened up there. So it's happening simultaneously as people pass away and as people go. So you do have a day of judgment, but it's not this day of judgment that's going to happen in this world. So there's a difference behind this. I'm not going to get too much into that, but what I want to do is I want to highlight some of these differences of how they cause conflict in trying to understand Sikhi or trying to understand one another if we're not willing to look through the other person's lens, right? Because there's a significant difference behind that. And adding on to this, time plays a major role as well. Time is, like I said, linear, and then inside of Sikhi, it's circular. There's an age, there's Satyug, Treta Yug, and the world is created and destroyed, and the destruction is happening, and the incarnation is happening. Where God lives makes a difference. And one of the biggest things that is emphasized in Sikhi is personal divine experience, which I feel sometimes is not really looked at upon in the same way, or is not even emphasized in the Western worldview, where you can sit and have a divine personal experience. And sometimes people hear these words and they automatically associate it with, oh, you're one of those new age people, you're a hippie, you're like this. And maybe that's the only way that it gets seen inside of the Western culture. But divine experience is the root. As soon as you're born, you know that's what you're striving towards inside of Sikhi, inside of this different lens. That's the purpose. If you're not striving towards divine experience, what else is there? There is nothing else. So your divine experience dictates everything, your journey, the bliss that you do, and what you do in your life. All of these things make a difference, and that's what's emphasized for each personal Sikh, is your relationship with your Guru. And now, like I said, Guru is seen different. It's not a messenger, it's not a prophet, but Guru itself is the form of God within the world. And that relationship in a physical matter, and then in a spiritual and mental matter, your relationship with the Guru makes a big difference. Because when you do good deeds in the world, you gain the ability to find a true Guru, the true enlightener. And through the blessings of that true enlightener, your ignorance is dispelled and you merge with God. That's a big difference. You gain the ambrosial nectar. Now this God's name, I know in the Bible, it refers to God's name, you know, being the core, or the one of the greatest elements that you absolutely need to, you know, reach salvation. But now God's name is just not a physical name. It's not something that can be written down with paper and ink. We use names that are associated words like creator or protector, sustainer, these types of words. But the actual words, the actual name of God is that sound that's omnipresent throughout the entire world, that's already deep within you. God is already, Waheguru is already, creator is already inside of you. Yet that ignorance is not allowing you to see it. So what you need through the Sikhi lens is you go towards enlightenment through the Guru, where you get blessed with ambrosial nectar through this blessing, where you're able to dive deep down. It's like a boost where you can dive deep down. It breaks away those chains that's holding you for lifetimes. And that same nectar, that God's name that's resonating already, that sound is already within you. And that's being brought out. And that's done through constant recitation of a mantra, through God, what we refer to reciting God's name, the physical aspect. So Waheguru, or different recitation, different practice. And as you do it, you're digging that well deeper and deeper and deeper till you find that core. And, you know, all of that ignorance is dispelled. So while speaking about this, the experience of God, the divine personal experience, God's name, you know, all of these things, they're viewed differently, yet I can see beautiful ways to link each other. And when we speak about linking things and differences, you know, I've taken a lot of classes and listened to a lot of debates between evolution and the creation of the world through biblical doctrine. And there's always constant clash, there's always difference. But when I look at it through the Sikhi lens, you see that, well, I agree with both. I agree with evolution, makes sense, and God creating the world, that makes sense as well. But through the other lens, it has to be one or the other. You can't have both. So whether it's like the Darwin theory of evolution, it all makes sense, where evolution is happening, but because omnipresent creator is already within each and every element, all of that is guided and all of that is actually done. It's the form of God that's actually changing and evolution, it's going through evolution. And if it reached through all of these stages and then humans were formed, that makes sense as well. But there is a power that's guiding it, the power that's doing it, because nothing is indifferent from that one omnipresent creator. And that's something that is a big divide between religion and science in the modern world. Whereas Sikhi, if we look at it from the atheist perspective, and God can't be, so everything is just happens to be and is just evolutionizing and it's going towards something, so you really have no goal, and it's just there's no meaning to life when you look at it from that aspect. And why does it change in a certain way? Is it just by chance? Is it by coincidence? So a lot of these debates happen. I'm not going to get too much into it, but what I'm trying to say is, like, from this lens, a lot of debates that happen between modern science and orthodox religion in the Western world, a lot of those debates don't even exist when you look at it through the lens of Sikhi. So that's why I'm emphasizing it to those people that get confused so much with growing up in the modern world and being influenced from Hollywood, different media sources. You're bombarded with this worldview, which confuses you because it doesn't align with your religious or your faith's worldview, right? So you get confused on which one should I understand. So you're trying to find a balance between it, but a balance doesn't really do any justice to help you understand it. So along with these things, because of the conflicts through evolution, scientific doctrine, the secular, religious, public, private, and how we play a role in that. My main purpose of walking through this video or sharing this dialogue is targeted, like I said at the beginning, towards three different audiences. One are those that are trying to understand Sikhi and aren't able to because they're looking at it through a completely wrong lens. Second are those that are growing up within a worldview of Western culture, of Christianity or Abrahamic worldview, and those definitions that are associated with certain words, and then trying to understand Sikhi, but they're confused about it completely. Like some people Sikhs that might have been born and raised in Canada, in England, or America, Australia, wherever it might be. And then the third are those that are born and raised in a dharmic environment, grown up in the society where everyone looks through a Sikhi lens, yet they're confused as where did this weird Western ideology come into these Western-born Sikhs, and why do they turn into this weird, like, liberal, weird, like, sort of modernized Sikhi? In their eyes, it seems that's the right way to go because it feels good. In your eyes, it feels like they've just completely walked off the path because that's not even true Sikhi anymore. And to try to understand where that comes from. And sometimes, like I said before, somebody that's doing it in a completely different way, which is like watered down, or, it's the certain core elements to Sikhi have now been taken a weird reroute through the Western lens, and that's why somebody goes through it and says, well, I'm not experiencing anything, so it must be false. So that's why we have to kind of understand this so we can route ourselves towards the right way. And sometimes, one last thing before I end off, I feel that because of the influence of capitalism, materialism, and all of these things that are influencing, the entire world, those that are trying to understand Sikhi and trying to even discuss Sikhi today, this influence is so strong upon them that we don't realize that we're looking through the wrong lens. We're questioning history in a way that, like, Greek philosophers, almost not even Greek philosopher, like maybe more like the 17th, 18th century philosophers or historians might be questioning, whereas that's not the lens of Sikhi. We're trying to go through something that's completely trying to make a logic of everything rather than going through divine experience. So a lot of these things are influencing us, and sometimes I feel in society, especially in Punjabi society, there's a thing where you're trying to strive towards this beautiful, modern, advanced thing that is perceived towards you through media. You're trying to get a visa, move to a different country, and then you take all of the good things that make sense, but then you're taking all of the negative things associated with it as well, and moving away from all the virtues of Sikhi. You're going towards what we call the American dream of having lots of money, of becoming rich, being financially free, having the freedom to do whatever you want. That's kind of like an associated goal in today's society, but in Sikhi it's completely the opposite. You could be poor, you could be anything, you're detached from the world, but you're in a divine experience, you're in complete bliss. So that humility and all of these virtues are completely being lost, and you're moving towards something else. And then we shape Sikhi around that, which confuses us even more. So that's why it's my request to understand these things, so we can dive deeper within ourselves, help each other understand what we're moving towards, and help ourselves especially diagnose, step back from our bias or our constructions that we've built in our mind, break those down and completely, submit ourselves to the understanding of Gurbani, understanding of Guru Sahib. So if I've said anything wrong, if I've made any mistakes, I request that please forgive me. I'm just a child that's trying to learn, as we're all trying to learn and try to move towards that common goal. So if you have anything to add in, please let me know in the comments. And just like, because this conversation, I said, needs to be said and expanded even more, and a lot of people actually don't even realize that they're looking at Sikhi in the wrong lens, then maybe try to share this video and open up this conversation with them. So ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਬੇਨਤੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਨ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਜੀ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ